Let's see. We are live. Hey, everybody. I'm Haley Gray. I'm the founder of the Women's Entrepreneur Network. And I am live again. And this is like the umpteenth time today. Y'all are probably going to be really totally sick of me by the time I'm done. And this are my friends, Victoria Bentley and Velma Gallant. And we're supposedly talking about forgiveness. And even when they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about whatever else comes to mind, too. Velma will probably manage to keep us on topic. Maybe. If we're lucky.
And happy birthday to you this week, girl. 50 years old.
50. Yep. The big 50.
That's
I'm
a biggie.
1972 model. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be celebrating. I am excited to be cancer free. Now, stitches out of my face. I'm hopeful that I will no longer be the Jolly Green Giant by Saturday. Well, my face is
the green bruising. Gotcha.
The green bruising. I bruise green for some reason, so y'all can laugh. It's very awesome makeup. It's been on both sides. Now it's down to one side. I've determined that cameras, the right lighting, and a pair of glasses can hide the world's sins.
Hey, been to battered women's groups lately?
Huh?
Been to battered women's groups lately? There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another job for another life. But I'm working with a couple of friends who are doing independent, like battered women's homes. But let's talk about forgiveness. We finally got everybody back.
I know.
Because I love this topic. When Victoria said it earlier, I was like, ooh, we need to do that because, you know, there are so many times when people do shit to us. And they are such a pain in the butt. You know, and this happens, you know, family members, children, colleagues and coworkers. And you're like, well, you should just apologize, damn it. And they're never going to.
But that's not what forgiveness is about. Because if you hold out for the apology, you know,
that's
your 90th birthday.
You know, we could be waiting for the second coming. We could be waiting for the next ice age. It's going to be a while. It'll be a hot minute because they're just not going to apologize.
Well, they might or they might not. But the difference is you have to not care.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the ticket, is just not, you know, and not in a snarky way. Well, I don't care. You can build. Just like, no, it's your apologies about you. What I do, forgiveness is about me.
Yeah.
Well, me and God, but it's about me, regardless of your behavior.
Right. The only thing I can control is how I feel and react about a certain situation. Oh, Velma, you are muted. Again.
And let's remember, forgiveness is about the future. It's not about the past.
No.
And
there we go.
If you want to move on, if you want to move on, if you want to have a better future, forgiveness is the ticket. And boy, it's taken me a long time on some things. But it's amazing how when I was able to forgive, when I was able to move past that thing, whatever it was, how as soon as I forgave, it just ceased to matter. It's like it was a big eraser, and it, you know,
it's
funny. I go to this dinner every month with a group of women I've known for forever. I mean, like some of them over 40 years.
A little while.
And they all know, or most of them know, my ex-husband. And I'll be saying something, and there are a couple of divorced women in the group, and they'll say, "Oh, you're talking about blankety blank again." And I stopped and I said, "Oh, no. And, you know, I will have been talking about somebody else or something that I read or something that I came across. But they assume that when I say something that isn't positive, or if I'm referring to something that happened, they assume that I'm talking about my ex-husband." And I thought, girls, I've been divorced from him for 30 years. I don't even remember what he looks like. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine being stuck there? Can you imagine
Mm-hmm.
30 years later, you got the grievance list? Oh my word. You want wrinkles? That's the way to get them. You want an ulcer? That's the way to get it. And I think, I don't want any of that.
That's ulcers right there.
Yeah. You think about hanging on to the anger or hanging on to the grudge or hanging on to the grievance list. What on earth does that do? Or the other thing that reminds me of this is the Southern Women's School. I'm just so worried about Sally Sue. And it's like, yeah, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, well, her husband left her and she doesn't have any money. So bring her dinner. Stop worrying. You know what I mean? It's such a wasted, it's virtue signaling horse pucky. Like,
my favorite definition of forgiveness is remembering without hurting anymore.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, you're always good with good ones, Velma.
Yeah.
I love that one so much because you can look at your past like a rear view mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's small for a very good reason. It's there to help us navigate. It's not there for us to be looking at. And if we're not in forgiveness, then we've also got the volume turned up on the rear view mirror as well, right?
Yeah.
And so it ends up consuming us. And I like what you were talking about, hanging on to things. I heard an analogy not that long ago about unforgiveness is like hanging on to a burning rock.
Mm-hmm.
It's burning your hand and it's not doing anything to the other person.
Right.
And so when we're hanging on to it, we're hanging on to and scarring ourselves. Whereas if we put it down, that rock actually has the opportunity to cool.
That's good. You said something about the rearview mirror, and I have a good friend, a dear friend, who has OCD. And one of her compulsions while driving was to look in the rearview mirror until she hit 3 different cars in front of her. Mm-hmm. And said, okay, I got to get help for this. And did. And it was as simple as taking a medicine for OCD, and all of that stuff stopped. And I think with that, and here we go. I'm no shrink. I have no license. But I think sometimes OCD is a way of trying to control things that you have no control over. When you've had, for example, a traumatic childhood, and you develop these things, mm-hmm. Well, you have control, or so you think. I'm going to touch every 3rd book, or I'm going to
check my keys 3 times on the way out the door, or wash my hands.
Right. And that, like hanging on to something, is destructive, and not forgiving is destructive. And when you get rational about this, although, you didn't reason yourself into it, you're not going to reason yourself out of it. You still go back to the David Byrne kind of logotherapy thinking, where you can retrain your brain. You can talk to yourself and say, is this helping me? Is this true? Is it really true? Let's reverse it. Let's look at it a different way. Dr. Pepper, good solution. You know what I mean? That mm-hmm. all of those things that we do, we can maybe look at and retrain and say, is this helping me or is this hurting me? And hanging on to the grievance list, what's that going to do? Well, I'll never get hurt again if I hang on to it. Listen, note to self, he's a jerk. Don't go out with him. That ought to do. Put a Post-it note in your calendar. When Billy Bob calls, don't answer.
You mean like that phone call I got from South Africa earlier that I was looking at it going, not today, Satan.
Yeah. Now, what phone call was this? You want to tell me about this?
My phone, I don't know if you get this. I periodically get phone calls from random foreign countries. I just had one from South Africa. And, sometimes they're doing it to like drive up a phone bill, or it's a wrong number or whatever. And I'm just like, no, I don't even need to answer that. Thank you.
That I've not heard of, but mm-hmm. I'll take it on face value that, golly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So, it's just one of those things where You don't have to answer it. You don't have to deal with it. And you don't have to drive yourself nuts.
Yeah.
I think you do have to deal with it, though. I think that when
eventually,
you have grievances, you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. You're going to get the ulcer, or you're going to forgive.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no. And I mean, and I do find that properly dealing with a situation, like if you need to tell somebody something, telling them something honestly, rather than like going, bleh, or you can forgive them, depending on the situation. I find that, polite niceties and lying to somebody to their face is not really the right thing to do either. But you can forgive them and say, hey, it's just not the right time. We're moving on, right? You don't have to be like all up in their face, but you don't have to lie to them either.
Mm-mm.
Well, and it's also looking at what do you believe is required in order for you to forgive? And that, I think, is a really important thing. Like, is it, I need to know why, or they need to apologize, or if I forgive them, then they're going to think that this is okay. Because I don't know about you, but I was raised, something happens, like you say sorry.
Or that forgiveness implies consent. Yeah, which it does not.
Well, and saying sorry doesn't automatically mean that the other person forgives you, nor do they have to forgive you at that point in time, nor do they have to forget.
Nor should they necessarily have anything to do with one another.
Right. Totally. I mean, I remember going back and forth. My in-laws were kind of a treat. And, there was always that like, well, I apologized. Of course I therefore am completely indemnified of everything, absolved of all of my bad behavior. Doesn't mean I've forgotten it. Forgiveness does not imply that you forget or that you're going to agree and enter into a contract to have that same thing happen over and over and over again either.
I had a really interesting experience at a courthouse one time.
I bet you've had lots of interesting experiences at courthouses, my friend.
You can only imagine. But my ex-husband had an affair with a woman that I found out about later.
Mm-hmm.
And it never fails on an annual basis. I find out something, even 30 years later, I'm finding something new all the time. Mm. But, she said, I really want to talk to you. And I said, no, thank you. And she said, well, it's just talk. And I said, no, thank you. And she said, but I want to apologize. And I said, no, thank you. And I kept going. And she was trying to, because I received something later in the mail. She was trying to feel better. She was trying to unload her guilt by, if I tell you the down and dirty and give you this big apology, I'm off the hook. That was her thinking per
right
what I read in the letter. And I thought, what you do is your business. It has nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. It certainly had nothing to do with me the first time when you were involved with my ex-husband. Like I'm the collateral damage that was not on your radar at the time. Oh, I felt so guilty. That was part of the letter. Oh, I felt so guilty. And I think, not guilty enough to say no, or not guilty enough to go away, or whatever. And I thought about it and I thought, it doesn't matter. We watched the movie Love Actually the other night. Mm-hmm. You know, the movie that has Hugh Grant and Emma Thompson and Colin Firth, and just a long, long list of Mr. Bean is in it. And it's a Christmas movie, and it's a wonderful movie. And there's a scene where Emma Thompson has found a gift in her husband's coat pocket of a gold necklace, and she thinks it's her Christmas present. So on Christmas Eve, they're unwrapping their presents, and she finds a same size box, thinking that's the gold necklace, and finds out it's
Mm-hmm.
a Joni Mitchell CD, and she's in her bedroom sobbing her eyes out. And it was truly some of the best acting I've ever seen. And I thought about it and I thought, no, this is too good. And I went looking for it in the notes and whatever. And she said that her husband at that time, Kenneth Branagh, had had an affair with, hyphen names. I can't, another actress, and I can't think of her name, who had been a friend, who had been starring with him in a movie. And Emma Thompson had found out, and that she and Kenneth Branagh had gotten divorced. And he was, golly, I can't think of this woman's name, but she said she tapped into that feeling for the movie scene, the pain that she had experienced. And I thought about that. And she said, but I've made my peace long, long since with Helena Bonham Carter. That's who it was. And she said, we're fine. And I thought about that. And I thought, she could make her peace only if she had forgiven Helena Bonham Carter. It has nothing to do with Helena Bonham Carter or Kevin Branagh. It is a choice that Emma Thompson made. And I spent so much of my life thinking it was dependent on what you did, and that I was not self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And that was huge when I realized, no. This is on you. And I'm now responsible for feeling bad or not feeling bad.
Right.
I can no longer blame someone.
Mm-hmm.
I can also,
you get to decide how you feel about a particular situation. You get to assign value and meaning to things.
right.
That's one of the interesting things I think that we expect, society tells us that we should feel a certain way about certain things. And we are the ones who get to ultimately decide in our lives, in our businesses, in, our relationships, our families, what meaning are we assigning to certain things? And how are we assigning that meaning to them? And what value we assign to them, and what emotional assignment we give, and all of those things.
And what a grown-up thing that is. Well, that and the part of the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the wisdom to know where the bodies are buried, and to be good friends with the district attorney.
There you go.
There, there's your forgiveness now. But
yeah, just if you need me to show up sometime with a shovel, just tell me you need me to show up with a shovel and say, just be here and I'll be there for you. But please don't tell me over electronic means why you need me to show up with a shovel.
Right.
If a friend doesn't have a shovel, are they really a friend?
Yeah, right.
Can I quote you on that? If a friend doesn't have a shovel, are they really a friend?
There you go. Boy, that has so many contexts, because especially, that they tolerate your bullshit. That's part of it, right?
Absolutely.
Just shovel it away.
Yep.
Yeah.
To forgive is divine. To show up with a shovel is
supreme. So, Velma,
think we've lost our marbles this week. I probably have, honestly, by this point. I think I've about lost most of my marbles for the week. So
that's why you keep them in a jar.
It's only Wednesday.
Yeah.
So if y'all want to have a road trip and come to my house on Saturday, you'll get to see the full marble effect.
Wish I could.
Wish you could.
It's 500 miles. It's a little bit of a drive from me.
Only 8 hours.
Yeah, and Velma, 2,000 miles for you?
Oh, it's going to be, it would be a bit of a drive, that's for sure.
Yeah, you'd have to leave on Thursday.
Yep, got a couple of time zones to cross.
Yeah.
Just one or two. I hear we have a really good airport like 10 minutes from our house. And really good guest rooms. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, this whole forgiveness thing is important for the soul.
It is. It's really
I
crazy.
didn't do it.
I might need a shovel.
I'll be there. Might take me a couple of days.
Couple of time zones. I'll be there.
You know, it's really interesting because you know, I've been divorced twice, so I have 2 exes to forgive, and and
Got a little bit of practice on that.
yeah. Well, and it's all okay. You know, like I have plenty of discussions with my son about it. I mean, he knows why our marriage ended, and he sees some of the behaviors still occurring for his dad, and it angers him, and he doesn't like it. And we had one conversation, and I'm like, you know what? I said, maybe your dad didn't take care of me in his human form, but your dad, his soul, actually really did take care of me. And that's where we can get to when we allow forgiveness in. So where that comes from for me is my ex is the one that chose the dog and fought for the dog. I didn't want a dog. And that dog, Chester, took care of me as I transitioned out of the marriage, as I transitioned into an empty nester. Like, it made all the difference for those changes in my life. And when we transitioned out of our marriage, my ex had chose the faith community that cared for me as we transitioned out of our marriage. My ex gave me my amazing son. So can I really say 100% that he didn't care for me? Because there was a lot of ways that he did.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really lovely thing that you've said, because what you have chosen is to see the glass way more than half full.
Mm-hmm.
And that the empty part is in the rearview mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's so beautiful.
I would wish that for all of my friends to be able to see what's important today. You know, today you have A, B, C, you know, from Chester, your faith, your son. You have those things, and those are good things. And yeah, you can list the things he did that caused the divorce, or the things that he did that caused you pain. But why? You know, I don't understand the upside of doing that. And people say, well, I don't ever want to forget. I don't really. You kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you don't have to forget, but you don't have to hurt either.
No. Well, and I think that forgiveness and forgetting are 2 different things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that
way much so. Yeah.
You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You know, there's a reason for that saying. And, you know, I can forgive somebody, but it doesn't mean I have to forget. I mean, I can forgive my oldest child for, you know, her actions, but it doesn't mean that I underestimate her. It doesn't mean that I forget. It doesn't mean that I, you know, whatever, or, you know, insert person, right? It doesn't mean that I put myself in a vulnerable position over and over and over again and let you keep whacking me upside the head.
Or 2 things can be true at once. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, you know, now that you have forgiven is not an all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't put your hand back in the scorpion jar.
Absolutely.
I forgive you, and I choose not to
stick my hand back in that scorpion jar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like I forgave the stove, so let's touch it again.
Yeah. It's very freeing. And I always thought, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I thought you were a chump if you forgave anybody.
Mhm.
No, I just was an angry person.
Yeah.
And
Forgiveness is a beautiful
life's
thing.
too short.
Getting to that point where you realize I can control my reaction, how I feel, the value I assign. Forgiveness is part of that, assigning that value and how you feel about it. Doesn't mean that it's gone. It doesn't mean that it never happened. But gosh, getting to that neutrality as quickly as possible is a beautiful thing. Way fewer ulcers.
I think unforgiveness is a way of abdicating responsibility for our own feelings in our own lives.
Amen.
Yeah. Well,
Amen. You're absolutely right.
It's
You
hard
can
to
always blame someone, and you never have to do the work that says, gee, did I have a part in this? Oh, I mean, that's enough to make somebody homicidal if they're not in the mood to forgive. Did I have a part in it? You might not have. I think about the chick in the courthouse. I didn't have any part of that. That was, I was living my life. But to not grow up, to be pointing fingers your whole life, and that's really it. That's not growing up. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to be there?
You know what? You spend a lot of time, effort, and energy doing that, pointing fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality for me is that I could spend a lot of time pointing fingers, blaming other people. Woe is me. My life is too hard. I have plenty of crap going on in the background at all times. Or I can just decide to release and let go and breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And forgive.
Why do you think God has asked us to forgive?
To forgive is divine, is it not?
Yeah. So why did he ask
There
us
is
to do
human to forgive divine. And I think that, there's a healing that happens in that process of forgiveness. And we have to forgive ourselves too for being in that situation in the first place.
Isn't that a hard thing to do?
Can be.
If we treated everybody as tough as we treat ourselves, we'd be kind of tough to be around,
Right? I was jokingly telling somebody earlier today that, sometimes my boss is a bitch, but at least she can't fire me. But I forgive her for being a bitch because she's a tough old bird.
There you go.
Y'all, I'm my own boss.
Yeah. I don't know. So
I think there's a lot of value in that because, I mean, if you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
it's all of the same things. If I forgive myself, then I might do it to myself again, or like I know I went through a lot of stuff around how do I keep ending up in all of these specific types of relationships. I can't trust myself. If I can't trust myself, and those, you get into that really circular thing, right?
And if you can't trust yourself, then you can't be in another relationship.
Yeah, but if you're not
can't
forgiving,
ever break
blaming
the
the other and not doing the work of looking at yourself saying, okay, I've been saying it's his fault, but yet I chose him.
Mm-hmm.
What do I have to do to not do it again? And that grace and that kindness,
Mm-hmm.
I think, is how we heal.
Yeah. And it's also hard to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, well, how did I screw up the situation too?
Yeah. Yeah.
And forgive yourself for that as well. And what did I have to do with that situation? What did I contribute to that situation?
Sometimes it's as simple as I didn't maintain my boundaries.
No.
Yeah,
Right?
that's not so simple. That's a big deal.
Simple,
And
but
that's
not
something
easy.
you learn as you age too.
Mm-hmm.
You learn when they've been crossed over enough times. You know, when
Yeah.
you've left the gate open,
Mm-hmm.
and people are treading on you, and you say, why did I leave the gate open? That's what the grown-up says, as opposed to, why are you treading on me?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So Velma, your camera is kind of at an
Yeah,
angle.
I can't
It's
see. I'm on
kind
my
of
phone.
moving.
She's
I'm
like
on my
moving around like crazy because she's on her phone.
Yeah.
The
I
computer
didn't want to
wasn't
miss
behaving.
out on this. And my internet was being a boob. So I'm like, okay, data, we'll use you.
There you go.
Data, I choose you. Pikachu, I choose you.
So yeah, I can't seem to get it lined up the way I want it to, but whatever.
And Jessica, you are welcome. You know, there are so many things in our lives. I mean, I think that it can be easy to show up as somebody who's got the perfect life and the perfect kids and the perfect everything. And, you know, my shit doesn't stink. And the reality is, you know, I've been there, I've done it. Okay, I'm still married to my first husband. And he has to deal with me being a cranky pain in the ass some days and has to forgive me an awful lot. You know, and the reality is that, you know, we are all human. Humans living in this human existence. And we have to go through this, regardless of how amazing we think we are or exalted or on pedestals or anything else.
Yep.
We all live this life. So,
And we're supposed to forgive. We're mandated to forgive.
absolutely.
And
No
that's
matter your
just
faith,
the
tradition.
human condition.
Absolutely.
Shit's going to happen, and people are going to do stupid things, and it's going to mess up our lives. And we do the same thing to other people on some version.
And we don't mean to do it.
And we don't mean to do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I shouldn't say that, because I don't know what anybody's intent is. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who do mean to do stuff. So I don't know. But I think that the pouring out of forgiveness, and I don't mean cheap grace. I mean, making a choice to forgive. That is, boy, it's hard, but
It's real.
if you don't do it, you live a sorry life.
Yeah. And it can eat you alive. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys for doing this with me tonight.
I'm so glad to be back. This is great.
Here. And we will catch y'all next week. I am so glad to be back. I finally have stitches out of my face.
Yay.
Gloria is finally back. So we're gonna hit it hot and go live a few more times between now and the end of the year. Y'all take care and have an awesome night. Take care.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.